At the table today, we have one of the most feared, high-stakes poker players in the entire world, Stephen Chidwick. He has won over $38 million in tournament pokers. He is well known to put his opponents in very, very difficult, uncomfortable, miserable situations.
This is risky business when you start tussling with not only the talent level that Chidwick possesses, but also his chip stack.
He makes you put your chips in the pot.
Does that look like the face of someone who gives up?
It does not.
On this Poker Masters final table, we're going to take a look at exactly how he does that. It's always a pleasure to watch the best players in the world play, and I'm very, very thankful that PokerGo lets us do that in the largest poker tournaments in the world on a regular basis. So, let's find out how Stephen Chidwick does it.
Is Lou Garza. You have to root for Lou to win this thing. Bottles will be popped, and fun will be had.
You know, if I were in my 20s, Ollie, maybe that would have been appealing to me, but I think I'm still going to stick with my choice.
Well, timeout.
Tell me how the party is, though.
I was going to be at that party. I just like to know party is happening.
Oh, so you're saying that somebody who is philanthropic, nice guy.
DeStefano raises it up on the button with the Queen-9 offsuit, which is perfectly fine and standard. That said, this is a spot where, even though he is clearly second in chips with about 50 big blinds, he should be a decent amount tighter than he normally should because he has to worry about the small blind, Garza, who has a pretty big stack as well, and Stephen Chidwick, the chip leader in the big blind. DeStefano actually has a really bad seat at this final table because he has those two big stacks on his left, and that should force him to be much tighter than normal. That said, I think Queen-9 is a pretty standard raise, and as the chip leader in Stephen Chidwick's shoes, you should be defending incredibly wide. And I think 6-4 offsuit is actually perfectly reasonable. When you are the big stack by a decent amount and you're playing pots against the medium stacks, you get to apply a lot of post-flop aggression when there are various short stacks at the table, as there are in this scenario with a 15 big blind stack and a 25 big blind stack. Let's go to the flop.
Gives back to the community, wouldn't have a crazy party?
No. No, he wouldn't. Because the party money is being donated to the Christian schools. I won't root against him. Meanwhile, heads up here as DeStefano opened the button to 80,000. Chidwick defended with his 6-4 as flop the gut shot straight draw. Knuckles over to Dylan, who has queen high. And this is risky business when you start tussling with not only the talent level that Chidwick possesses, but also his chip stack. Not a paltry over 2 million for Dylan, though.
Yeah, and of course, Chidwick has the type of hand on this board that he could easily take as a check raise, just having that gut shot, knowing that his opponent raising from the button probably doesn't have too strong of a range and would likely c-bet a high percentage of the time.
Stephen Chidwick checks this 10-3-2 flop, and then DeStefano goes for the continuation bet, which I think is fine. You have to be a little bit careful on boards like 10-3-2, because really, DeStefano does not have a whole lot of 2s or 3s in his range, so he does need to check back sometimes. And the hands you really want to check back are hands that have decent equity but cannot withstand a check raise. And I think that's probably going to be the case with hands like Queen-9, so I think betting is fine, I think checking is fine. If Chidwick's going to do a lot of check calling with hands like 6-4 or 6-5, then I love the bet, right? But if Chidwick is going to start check raising in the spot with hands like 6-4 or 6-5, then I don't like the bet nearly as much because then you have to fold out the queen high. I'm kind of surprised Chidwick to just not check raise immediately, but check calling is also perfectly viable with the intention of getting a little bit frisky on the turn or the river if the board runs out nicely for you. Let's see how it goes.
Obviously, in doing so, you do open yourself up to a 3-bet. And so Chidwick elects to just flat, and now Dylan picks up a gut shot of his own. The difference being that he's got the best hand with queen high and position, no less. Oh, and here's an interesting line. Chidwick choosing to lead out in a very small 40,000. The minimum into 390.
I want to hear your rating of Stephen Chidwick's bluff right here at this point from 1 where he's burning all of his money, to 10, which is as if he is a wizard. Let me know your rating in the comments section down below. And while you're at it, do me a quick favor and give this video a like and subscribe to help me out if you enjoy these exciting poker hands.
Third pairs, and also looks a little bit like he's trying to induce as well, so some confusion out of DeStefano, I'm sure, but for such a good price.
When the turn card brings a card that should not be especially good for the initial raiser who continuation bet the flop, as is the case on most cards lower than perhaps a 9, this is a spot where Chidwick should be leading a decent amount of the time in this situation where the payouts are very, very relevant because, again, we have a 15 big blind stack hanging around. So this is a spot where Chidwick gets to lead using a small size with a wide range of hands, including a lot of top pairs, middle pairs, 3s, 2s even, and some draws. Now, if you do make this small lead, you want to make sure you have a reasonable plan going to the river, but this is a spot where I think most people are not going to raise nearly often enough. And imagine if Chidwick can just see the river for one big blind and then potentially make the straight, make a pair that's often good, or maybe even run a bluff, that's actually not all that bad. What he really does not want to have happen, though, is he does not want to check and then have DeStefano make a big bet on the turn or something like 350,000, because then Chidwick has to fold out a hand that has pretty good equity or risk a ton of money in a spot where he will be running into top pair and better a decent chunk of the time. So pretty cool lead. I don't think I would have ever done this, but then again, I have not studied this spot nearly as extensively as I am sure Chidwick has. Facing the tiny lead, I think calling the queen 9 is fine. You don't really want to screw the spot up by raising and then getting re-raised. And queen 9 has pretty good equity. If you make a queen or a 9 or a jack on the river, you can be happy calling pretty much any amount. And if you don't, well, it's probably not going to go too well for you. Let's see what happens on the river.
Certainly going to come along with that draw and the overcard to the board.
Now the board pairs, and Chidwick certainly knows that 6-4 is not a winner at showdown, so how will he draw up the effort to win this pot? Or will he just give up?
10 seconds. $470.
I know you can't see his face right now, Ollie, but does that look like the face of someone who gives up?
It does not. And that 470 clears the best hand, so well done by Stephen Chidwick.
Will Stephen Chidwick give up on the river with the 6 high? No! This is a spot where DeStefano is going to have a lot of busted draws and a lot of ace highs. And this is also an interesting spot where I don't really know what Chidwick's range looks like, but I would not be shocked if it has some 2s in it and some 10s in it that could easily just be going for full value in this scenario. So I do think Chidwick's range is going to be very polarized in this spot to hands like a 10 and better, which also contains some trips, and busted draws. And I do think he will have some busted draws in his range, but quite often, DeStefano's range is going to be pretty weak in this spot. And I have to imagine that DeStefano should actually make some pretty big hero calls in this spot with stuff like ace high or even king high, assuming he does not block a lot of the obvious draws. And I have to imagine that most people, not saying DeStefano would not do this, but most people would not find those ace high and king high calls. So great play by Chidwick. He scooped up this pot. He applied maximum pressure as the big stack, and, he got the job done. That's going to be it for today. Huge thanks to PokerGo for letting us use this footage. If you enjoyed this video, if you enjoy all the content we make here, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons below. Also click the notification bell. We have a lot of fun videos coming out for you over the next few weeks, and I'm excited to share them with you. Good luck, have fun, and we'll talk to you next time.